Steel Nation, after losing 2 straight, they go into Las Vegas, take over Allegiant Stadium, and completely blow out the Las Vegas Raiders and advance to 4-2. This was a game they badly needed to win because losing 3 straight after starting 3-0 and sitting at 3-3 before primetime next week was not going to be good. It was not a good venue the Steelers shouldn't go down. And they didn't. They scored 32 points. Always thinking of you, Franco. Always thinking of you.
32 in Las Vegas against the Raiders. How fitting.
How fitting, man. I love it. 32 points, 30-plus points for the first time by the Steelers offense this season. It feels good. Now, let's settle down to earth. Let's talk about it a little bit because
It's the Raiders.
it is the Raiders.
They didn't have a quarterback coming into the season regardless, but they had their backup O'Connell in. They didn't have Devontae Adams for obvious reasons. They didn't have Jacoby Myers. He was hurt. They don't have a feature running back. They didn't even have their starting running back in Zamir White.
No.
They lost their defensive tackle, and I think Crosby was dealing with some sort of injury. He was playing through injury. But nonetheless, I mean, the Raiders are a dumpster fire. They're a disorganized organization from a roster standpoint and from a team standpoint.
And I'm not going to I'm not going to lie. The refs did kind of luck the Steelers out in some of the roughing the passer calls.
There were a couple calls that went to Steelers' way that shouldn't have. The roughing the passer calls, I would say some of the calls screwed the Raiders over, if I had to be real with you.
But at the same time, the Steelers also committed their own foolish penalties on offense. The penalties, the holding. We had 3 holding calls in this game, I believe.
Yeah.
With stalled drives. It seemed like for the most part of this game, every single time the offense got something going, and that was mostly because of Najee Harris, the offense would go 15 yards back. Every time they'd get something going, every time they go down the field, they would go back. Because
they would take 1 step forward, but then 10 steps back.
Whether that was due to penalties or stupid play calls or loss of downs or 2 delay of game penalties by Justin Fields today. Nonetheless, the Steelers put up 30 points. You got to give them that. And one thing I noticed throughout the second half is, one, the Steelers scored on all but 1 drive in the second half.
Second half football team.
And one of the biggest criticisms everybody gives Tomlin and the Steelers and the offensive game plan is when they're up by a certain amount, they get complacent. They get too safe. They think, hey, we're up by this amount. Let's just pack it up and go home. They didn't do that today. They were aggressive. They had that killer mentality. They had that killer instinct where, yeah, we're up. Shout out to Secret Underdog with a 2, man. Secret Underdog with a 2. Appreciate you.
Thank you, Secret Underdog.
The Steelers had this mentality to them where, yeah, we're up by a certain amount, but that's not enough. And as Steelers fans, we're not used to that. We're used to them being up by a certain amount and then the team coming back and coming into a 1-score heart attack. That was not the case today. So I got to give the Steelers credit that. I got to give the Steelers their props. They came in with a killer mentality, that killer instinct where let's finish this. Domination. And a game where the usual casual would go in and think, hey, the Steelers are going to blow out the Raiders. They don't have this and this and this. They're going to blow them out. And as Steelers fans were thinking, yeah, I'm not so sure about that. I'm actually scared because of those reasons.
Yeah, we came into this game basically worried because, the Steelers' tendency recently about underestimating talent and just letting depth guys just run all over them. They didn't allow that today.
That was not the case, and for the first time, we won a game we should have won and won it in proper fashion.
And I want to start with the defense right here. They allowed an opening drive touchdown to Alexander Madison, and that wasn't really a good start off there. But the defense bounced back big time after that. After that, the defense was practically unstoppable.
Dude, yeah, they allowed an opening drive touchdown, which is really the only significant touchdown they allowed outside of garbage time. But ever since then, dude, 3 turnovers, 2 of them forced by TJ Watt with forced fumbles, 1 of them at the goal line. At the goal line. And then a Dante Jackson interception towards the late of the 4th quarter, as well as a blocked punt by Jeremiah Moon. This defense, man, it was very much like last week where they committed the turnovers and got the blocked special teams play. The only difference is they didn't allow the chunk yards. They didn't allow the plays. They didn't allow the touchdown that they allowed to the Cowboys last week. So props on the defense for adjusting after that first drive and just dominating the game throughout.
No, because the past 2 weeks against the Colts and the Cowboys, the defense was not good. They were allowing chunk yardage plays, some of them to backup quarterbacks, some of them to back up wide receivers, some of them to back up running backs. They were just allowing plays left and right. Their third down defense was just awful. And sometimes they would get turnovers here and there, but like outside of that, the defense still wasn't doing their job. They were still allowing teams to run right through them, to get down the field and score. They needed to bounce back big time in this game. And yes, it's the Raiders. They basically, outside of Brock Bowers, had backups on the offensive line at the quarterback position. But it's a performance that the defense had to do.
Yes.
Despite who they were going up against, they could not afford to allow depth guys to just
run all over them.
Yeah, exactly.
So they flipped a switch this week, and I got to give them props for that. They needed to clean up the mistakes. They needed to clean up the errors, and that's exactly what they did. Yes, they went up against an absolutely depleted preseason squad versus the Raiders, but it's a lot better than them allowing a legacy game to a Trey Tucker or to whoever, almost like a Travis Fulgham 2.0 situation. So I got to give the defense props for that, and props to TJ Watt. In my opinion, he's probably the defensive player of the game for us.
2 forced fumbles, crucial turnovers there.
When he's not getting to the quarterback, he's still making plays, man. He'll intercept the ball in the passing game. He'll force the fumbles on the ground game. TJ Watt just makes plays all out.
Make a tackle for a loss, he'll just leave his impact. The guy's the best offensive player in the league.
And the only legitimate edge piece we had, because everyone else was out. Highsmith, Herbig, Leal, out. We had Jeremiah Moon start opposite, who just came off IR. And Watt still making plays. They couldn't have an answer for Watt at all. So huge props to Watt. Huge props on the defense for making the plays necessary. Good stuff. Great stuff.
No complaints from the defense whatsoever. Very pleased by the performance by the defense.
The offense, however, I do got to say they put up 30 despite, how it happened or who it was against or whatnot. It's rare the Steelers offense puts up 30. So sometimes we just got to take what we can get.
Sure.
It may be as mediocre. It might be settling for the bare minimum. But literally, we don't get this often. And what we don't get often is Naji Harris running for 100-plus yards and a touchdown and for breaking away for constant big chunky yardage.
Now, he did that twice in this game. He had a 36-yard touchdown run, which was incredible. On a toss, on a second and Najee, which is typical of the Steelers' usage of him. But Najee just made the most of it. Going up the left sideline, diving for the end zone, just making
reaching out
play.
like he's in Space Jam.
But even before that, like earlier on that same drive, like I swear to God, on the other side of the field, Najee just took a man's ankle.
Jack Jones, you are not allowed to be seen for the foreseeable future because Najee took your ankles, he took your name, he took your manliness, he took your life.
He's taking him back to Pittsburgh. He's going to hang it right over his fireplace.
He is anchoring his ankles over his fireplace, bro. God almighty, Naji Harris cooked today. Naji Harris had his best game of the year, probably one of his best games of his career so far. Naji Harris put the team on his back. He really did.
The whole rushing offense, though, was just excellent. 183 total rushing yards by the offense.
Najee getting 106 of those, and Justin Fields following with 59 and 2 rushing touchdowns.
Yeah.
Justin Fields was a better rusher than he was a passer today. I do got to mention that. There were times there where Fields looked like he didn't know what he was doing. He made a lot of bad reads, a lot of bad decisions. He threw an interception that was taken back due to a roughing the passer, which led to one of the Steelers' touchdowns. I do got to point that out. But there were a couple times where Fields was making decisions, making his reads, making his throws, and we're like, what are you doing? He held onto the ball too long. He almost threw an interception or two. He missed a couple open targets.
Plenty of open targets in this game.
There was actually a couple times where the Steelers had a chance to put up a ton more points, like literally. Because there were, and we have to talk about it because these are things that are probably going to bounce back with the Steelers, man. They scored 30. They had a very good offensive showing, specifically in the rushing game, mostly with Najee. But there were some drives, there were some errors from mostly everyone on the offense, from the play calling, from Fields to the targets to the offensive line. It's just kind of typical what you saw. And most of this was in the first half, so to see what they did in the second half and adjust was a big prop to them. But at least they stepped up and they closed the game out and they did show that aggressive nature towards the end. So in that case, yeah, I got to give big props to the Steelers. And again, we don't get that often, so I have to take it when we can.
Yeah. But
at some point in the game, there were a few drives where Justin Fields, one drive specifically, he did miss 3 straight wide open targets. 3 straight. One of them was a wide open Calvin Austin in the end zone. and he underthrew him. He was motioning, he was running outside, scrambling outside the pocket to his left side. He threw it and completely underthrew it. Completely underthrew it. Calvin Austin was wide open in the end zone. The second play, the next play after, he missed Freiermuth wide open on the left sideline. He overthrew Pat Freiermuth. Would have been an easy first down. The next play, he overthrew Pickens on the right sideline. I think the Steelers settled for a field goal. Correct me if I'm wrong. But it's just one of those things where Fields missed 3 straight targets, and we're thinking, just hit one of these. Who knows how this could end?
Yeah, not to mention, I think the very next offensive drive, he had Calvin Austin on a deep pass, and Austin beat his man, and Fields threw a deep ball, and just by inches, he just missed Calvin Austin just short.
Yeah. And what's
overthrew him, I should say.
And what was sickening was the very next the very next play, they ran some razzle-dazzle, flea flicker type thing where Fields pitched it back to Najee.
Razzle-dazzle shit.
Then Najee pitched it back to Muth, and Muth pitched it back to Fields, and Fields was eventually sacked. So it was just one of those things where they tried to be too cute, they tried to be too fancy, they tried to be like the Lions in a sense, but it was executed in the worst way possible.
No, and when it comes to the play calling in this game, even against the Raiders, I wasn't all that impressed. I felt like the play calling wasn't all that great by Arthur Smith. I don't think he really called that great of a game. Though we got 32 points, I'm not going to complain about the points we put on the board. But I feel that his play calling is still conservative and still inconsistent. There was even a time where Najee, it was a toss to Najee, and he got a big gain there. But then the very next play, they did the same play. Like if you're going no huddle in Madden NFL, and you're doing the same play, that's what happened.
Right.
They did a second straight toss, and Najee had a loss of downs there.
So it might be nitpicking. It's just one of those things we can't ignore. We want to bring up because those are some of the errors that have been constant for the couple weeks now. And we're not trying to let 30 points just completely blindside us of that.
Or a blowout victory against the Raiders of all teams blind us. No, these are apparent things that the Steelers got to work on, that they got to fix, because you don't want this stuff to linger into the next matchup and then the matchup after that, because our schedule only gets tougher, dude.
Dude, the Raiders might go down as the last real easy opponent for the Steelers.
And after
all
that
season.
After that, it only gets worse. It only gets tougher.
Because Fields also hit Muth for a touchdown, but that was called back because he was over the line of scrimmage and it was a legal forward pass, right?
Yeah, and that play really frustrated me by Fields, because I find that play to be a very rookie quarterback-like mistake to happen. And Fields being a fourth-year starter, I don't see how he doesn't have the awareness of where the line of scrimmage is or where the marker is for him to throw the ball. Like, he should be aware that, hey, I got to run it here.
Yeah, his eyes are just staying down the field. He has not really much field awareness in that situation. But ultimately, what happened afterwards did result in the Steelers' victory. So, again, call it nitpicking, call it being a little negative or not taking all the good. But it's just one of those things where I don't want to ignore it because they are mistakes that the Steelers' offense does commit week to week.
And if they don't clean it up, it will linger onto the rest of the season, and that's what worries me.
And one thing I want to bring up real quick, Pickens. He had a better game than last week. He had over 50 yards on 3 catches. He got more involved towards the end of the game than he did during the entire game, as a matter of fact. But Pickens, he had 2 drops today. One of them was in the end zone in the fourth quarter, which could have given the Steelers a lot more than what they had. So points left off the board is still a problem by the Steelers offense, whether that's from the play calling, the execution from the players, and that includes Fields and the targets and everybody. It's just, I think we got to start talking about Pickens and his drop problem. He's had 5 drops the last 4 weeks. We can't ignore that.
Considering he's our only wide receiver, he's our wide receiver 1, and our only impact player, yeah, it's concerning. The fact that he's dropping the ball this much, it's something that I was not anticipating, I didn't expect, but the fact that it's happening, it does worry me. And 2 drops in this game, like that's not what you want to see from wide receiver 1.
Those are just plays that are kind of just routine for him, right? Like those are the plays he always makes. You expect him to make.
Exactly. And the fact that he's not, I mean, it's like, what are you doing, Pickens?
So these are just the things we don't want to ignore because these are the things they're going to have to clean up. And if they run back with those situations against teams like the Jets or any of our AFC North opponents or whoever else we got for the rest of the season, it might not go in the way the Steelers favor like it did today. I do just want to point that out. Otherwise, I'm very happy with this win. All I wanted was a win today, and they actually exceeded expectations. It was still ugly in some fashion on the offense because, again, the play calling was not there. The execution from Fields, his decisions wasn't there. The drops from Pickens, the O-line penalties are still a thing. But one thing I will give the team is in the second half, much of that didn't exist. So that's a good thing. The second half team that the Steelers are is still a thing. Live in color, living in color. So in that regard, hey, the Steelers won 32-13. They get 30 points for the first time this season. Yes, it was against the Raiders. Yes, if you look at it in a context fashion, it may not be in the prettiest way, but sometimes we just got to take what we can get. We got to take the good when we can. It's just one of those things where, we don't get it often, so I'll take it. But the Steelers win. They beat the Raiders. That's their third straight win against the Raiders. Third straight year they beat the Raiders, so that feels good. And now they go to 4-2 before they head to 2 straight primetime matchups at home.
Yeah.
So they needed this. They needed the momentum drive, and they needed the win. So in that regard, I'm very happy with the win today. I'm very happy for the Steelers, and they just got to clean up on some of the mistakes on offense, and let's hope that we can remain healthy. We should be getting Highsmith and Herbig back. Zach Frazier went out with an ankle injury.
Another offensive line injury, and that's the last position that needs an injury right there is the center position. And Frazier's been nothing but a dog since being the starter.
Right.
If we lose Zach Frazier for a number amount of weeks, then the offensive line is just going to be even more depleted than it already is now.
Yeah.
We can't afford that. So
No, we can't afford to lose Frazier, dude.
fingers crossed that it's not overly serious or not too bad, that Frazier's able to work this out and just tough it out and whatnot. Hopefully he'll be fine when it comes to practice upcoming week. As we prepare for the New York Jets for another Sunday night primetime matchup, back at Heinz Field, the Steelers are 4-2. Are they the most convincing 4-2 team in the NFL? That's up for you guys to decide. That's up for you guys to feel. But no matter what, the Steelers coming off 2 straight losses, they needed a victory. A bad one at that.
Yes. And I think this is a game where specifically the offense can look back and look at where they messed up, look at where they missed on certain opportunities to get more points, or when the offense would get down the field and then they go back 15 yards due to just some ridiculous nonsense. Those are areas they can continue to clean up, and they're going to need to as we edge closer into the bye week and, of course, closer into the toughest part of the schedule. So, but for them to get the win, that's what they needed. They needed that locker room boost. They needed that momentum drive. So in that regard, hey, the Steelers won. I'll give them that, and I'm very happy with it. So Steelers win. Let us know your guys' thoughts down in the comments below. How you guys feel about the Steelers' victory? They got the Jets next week. I would still imagine Justin Fields will be the quarterback one. We'll see what Tomlin says. We'll see what the update is on Zach Frazier's injury. Nonetheless, let us know how you guys feel, and see you in the next one. Here we go, Steelers, man. 4-2.
And as always, like, comment, subscribe, and we'll see you later.
Peace.